Hello again, this is Anne and I'm going to finish the last part of Sky Country with you, and you can see that the last part has got a little square from a tapa cloth, from a Tongan tapa cloth. And remember, Mr. Naufahu is Tongan, and remember he gave Ella a little piece of tapa cloth to take with her that might bring her good luck. And part 3 is the return. So let's start reading. So the friends have just snuck out of the tree, the gap in the tree trunk, and the giants have gone on ahead to try and find Ella. And the ruru has taken off with Ngeru in its little talons. One by one, the 4 friends stepped out of the tree hollow. The screeches of battling birds assaulted their ears. The earth birds seemed to be gaining on the Sky Country birds. Being small meant they could dart at them more easily, gradually wearing them down. Lucy, Jack and Tim walked briskly ahead. Ella glanced back at the clearing. The remaining young giants were slowly standing up and brushing themselves down. Their hats had been pulled off and their clothes were torn. Some of their hair had been pecked out, leaving bald patches. "Ella, come on," Jack called gently, stopping to wait for her. "Where's George?" Ella asked. "He was with us. He said that because there was so much going on, no one would notice he wasn't dressed like a Fifi." Ella stopped walking. Did the Fifis catch him?" "No, he's okay," Jack said. "Come on, Ella, we can't stop." Ella continued walking. "So where is he?" "That boy from his class, Sam Marsh. His mum and dad made George walk back with them. They said it wasn't safe to be here. He couldn't even say goodbye to us. Come on, let's catch up to the others." Up ahead, through the trees, Ella could see Tim and Lucy. The forest was soundless, apart from the soft patter of their footsteps. There wasn't even bird song, but then all the birds had gone to do battle. Soon the sound of flowing water trickled through the trees. "I'm thirsty," Lucy said. "Me too," Jack agreed. Ella ran her tongue around her dry mouth. "Shall we—" "It's just—" Tim interrupted. "I think we need to go straight, and the water's somewhere to the right. Just a quick sip," Ella said. "Don't people die without water?" Lucy asked. Tim held his finger to his lips. "Whisper, they could be anywhere." "Timbo, let's take a short detour to get some water," Jack whispered. "Sounds close, then we'll turn back." Tim pushed his sandy blonde hair back from his eyes. Ella could see this was hard for him. Tim was someone who thought about all the things that could go wrong. It was a 5-minute walk to the small stream. When they reached it, they crouched down on the low bank and scooped water into their mouths. Ella felt she couldn't get enough, sloshing mouthful after mouthful through her dry, cracked lips and letting it dribble down her chin and onto her t-shirt. She looked over at Lucy and they smiled at each other. A branch cracked behind them. Ella froze. From the corners of her eyes, she saw giants drop from the huge trees. She felt the thud as they landed and moved towards them from behind. "Fifis!" Jack yelled. The 4 friends stood up, water dripping from them. A bird screeched above. "Cree! Cree!" Ella looked up. It was the ruru crossing the stream, with Ngeru still in its talons. "Cree! Cree!" he cried again, hovering, as if waiting for them on the other side of the stream. "Follow him!" Ella yelled, leaping into the stream. It was only up to her knees, but her feet sank into its muddy bottom, so it seemed to take forever to cross. She could hear Tim, Lucy and Jack splashing behind her. The Fifis took slow steps. Some of them were laughing. One of them called out, "Run, little people." Another called, "We're right behind you." Ella recognized Mole Man's voice as she clambered up the opposite bank. "Ah, the bird still got the kitten," he said. "4 goose snatchers and a kitten. This be a good day for us." The ruru flew further ahead through the trees, then stayed in one spot again, as if waiting for them to catch up. Behind Ella, Lucy cried, "They're going to catch us." Follow the ruru, Jack yelled. He's good luck, a guardian, a kaitiaki. Good luck, the words rang in Ella's head. Who had said good luck to her this morning? Mr. Naufahu. He'd handed her the small square of tupper cloth and said, it's good luck. Ella reached into the back pocket of her jeans and pulled out the piece of tupper cloth. The ground shook beneath her, and the tupper cloth quivered in her fingers as she ran. Behind them, the Fifis walked lazily, slowly, laughing at them, taunting them, like a cat with a mouse. The tupper cloth twitched in Ella's grasp, as if fidgeting to get away. She held it firmly, unable to stop to see what it was doing because she was running. With a fierce tug, it pulled from her hand and flew in front of her. It grew wider and longer until it was the size of a large blanket. It hovered beside the ruru in front of the 4 Tui Street kids. Ella felt the ruru's yellow-green eyes staring at her. What did he want? What was he trying to tell her? Mole Man was behind them. I'm tired of this game, he said. Let's take our little prisoners now. The ruru flapped his wings and cried, Cree, cree. The tupper cloth sailed towards Ella. It reminded her of a magic carpet from children's storybooks. Her heart raced at the thought. Maybe that was what the ruru was trying to say to her. Jump on the tupper cloth, she yelled to her friends. Get on it now. She sprinted to the tupper cloth and threw herself onto it, hoping she was right and that it wouldn't sink to the ground. Instead, it was as solid as wood, and it hurt as she slammed onto it. Behind her, Tim, Lucy and Jack leapt on. Ah, Jack cried, rubbing his knee. Get them, Mole Man yelled. The Fifis ran towards them. Ella looked up at their faces. They were hard and unsmiling. They reached out to grab hold of the tupper cloth, but it tipped upward and spun away from them. The Tui Street kids gripped the sides and leant forwards as the tupper cloth flew into the sky. Ella heard a blast of wind behind her and looked back. Hundreds of earthbirds were swooping from the forest treetops onto Mole Man and the other Fifis. Look, she called to her friends, but her voice disappeared in the wind. The tupper cloth flew up above the trees, away from the screeches of the birds and the shrieks of the Fifis. Beside the tupper cloth flew the ruru, holding Ngeru in his talons. Ahead in the distance, Ella could see the city, so she knew the field at the edge of the forest must be near. That meant the sky hole wasn't far off. You can let go of my arm now, Lucy called out to her. Ella looked at her hand. She had been gripping Lucy's elbow. Sorry, she yelled, letting go. She thought of the birds attacking Mole Man, and a line from a nursery rhyme came to her. Along came a blackbird and pecked off his nose. Ugh, she shivered. Below them, the forest was coming to an end. The field was in view now. The tupper cloth began to descend. It seemed to know where to go. There are people down by the sky hole, Tim yelled, peering down at the field. Ella felt her breath quicken. Could be Fifis. How do we make this go back up? She began to tug at a corner of the tupper cloth. Hang on, Jack called, leaning down. There's someone waving. It's George, Lucy yelled. Ella looked down at the field. George was smiling up at them, still waving. Beside him was a group of people. The tupper cloth landed gently on the grass, a small distance from the sky hole. The ruru hovered above the tupper cloth. Ella looked at him. She wanted him to give Ngeru to her now. The ruru's yellow-green eyes stared back into hers. As if he understood, he flew down closer to her so that he was in front of her face. Ella reached up to the Ngeru, and the ruru reached up to take Ngeru, and the ruru released the small kitten into her outstretched arms. Ngeru gave a tired meow. The ruru turned towards the forest, lingering as if waiting for something. Out of the forest flew hordes of earthbirds. They didn't screech or squawk now. The battle was over. The only sound was the beating of their wings. Rising to join them, the ruru cried, "Cree, cree!" Ella watched as he became one of many birds. The huge flock of earthbirds dived through the sky hole, one after another, until they had all gone. "Goodness," a giant woman beside the sky hole said. "That was a lot of birds. George, you weren't exaggerating." "So tiny," a boy who was a smaller version of George said. A man and another boy, also like George, made their way towards the Tui Street kids sitting on the tupper cloth. "This is my family," George said, walking over to them. George's mother smiled. She held a piece of wood in her hand and a hammer in the other. Ella wondered why, but didn't ask. George's father and brothers also smiled at them. "You're so tiny," the smallest brother said again. "You're so large," Jack said, looking up at them. George's family laughed. Behind them, 3 other people stepped forward. "Sam," Ella said. "I'm so sorry," Sam said, running his fingers through his red hair. "I never meant for—" "We know that," Ella said. "We'd better go," Tim said, "or the Fifis might catch up to us." "Things are going to change," Mr. Marsh said. "They certainly are," Mrs. Marsh said, nodding. "We didn't realise how extreme things could get," Mr. Marsh said, looking at George's parents. "We're going to close the sky hole after you've gone," George said. "Mum's got that wood to nail over the top of it." He looked sad. "Just for a while," George's dad said, putting his arm around George. "One day it'll be safe again, and we can open it again." Ella held her tired kitten close to her chest. "Maybe it's best for now anyway," she said. "Just for a while, until Neru's grown up." George nodded. "Maybe." He leant down and stroked Neru with one finger. Straightening up again, he looked at Jack. "I'll meet you on the platform one day to play cards like we used to." "Yep," Jack replied. "And I'll beat you again." Jack and George smiled. "Wish we were the same size," Tim said. "Then there'd be no problems." "That would be boring," Lucy said. "I like people to be different." George's mother laughed. "I agree with you. Makes life more interesting." "Bye, George," Jack said. "Glad we finally got to meet your family." He smiled at George's parents and said, "Good to meet you," then turned to make his way to the sky hole. Behind him, Lucy, Tim and Ella said goodbye to George and his family and followed Jack. "You've forgotten something," George said. They turned. The small square of tupper cloth drifted towards Ella, back to its original size. Ella reached for it with her free hand and put it in her pocket, then passed Neru to Jack. "This time, don't let him get away." "It wasn't me who let him go," Jack said, taking Neru firmly in his hands. "Anyway, he's too tired to run away." Jack snuggled Neru into his pyjama pants pocket. He tightened the waistband so the extra weight wouldn't drag his pants down. One by one, they sat on the edge of the sky hole and eased themselves onto the branch below. Peering up over the edge, they waved one last time. "Go now," George's mother said, looking worriedly over towards the forest. "Someone's coming." Out of the trees, a man staggered and fell, then crawled a few meters and finally pulled himself up. As he took a few more steps, Ella realized it was Mole Man. Her hands froze on the edge of the sky hole. "Leave him to me," Sam Marsh's father said. "We have some talking to do. He's taken things too far." George's dad leant down to the 4 friends. "We'll nail this wood into the ground now," he said. "We will see you again one day." Slipping their hands off the edge of the sky hole, the last thing the Tui Street kids saw was George leaning down beside his father, smiling sadly at them. Then George's parents slid the wood over the sky hole. The sound of hammering reverberated through the branches as the 4 friends made their way down the tree. At the platform, they took a small break. Jack carefully passed Neru to Ella before he sat down. "You've got something to write about for your hero's journey story now, Ella," Lucy said. "What do you mean?" Ella asked, gazing at Neru asleep in her arms. "Well, we've all just been on one," Lucy said, tightening her pigtails. "But it was your hero's journey, really. We just helped you." "My hero's journey?" Lucy nodded. "But aren't all the difficulties meant to be solved at the end of a hero's journey? Tim asked. I mean, we're okay, but George is stuck there with Fee-Fis. I reckon those Fee-Fis won't last much longer, Jack said. Lots of those young ones there, they probably didn't like the way Mon Man treated Ngeru. Like Sam Marsh and his parents, Tim agreed. He stood up. Shall we keep going? We shall, Sir Fartus, you smelly little cloud, Jack said, standing too. He took the sleeping Ngeru from Ella's arms and placed him back in his pyjama pants pocket, saying, Be honest, Ella. You're grateful I wore these pyjama pants now, aren't you? Near the bottom of the tree, Ella could see Jack's mum and his little sister Aroha sitting on the front steps of their house. Oh no, Jack muttered. Mum. His mum stood up as the 4 children clambered down the last few branches. You okay? She asked. Yep, Jack answered. Sorry, Mum, I was going to tell you where we were going, but it was early and I didn't want to wake you up. Lucky Mr. Nalfahu told me then. Looks like you've had some adventures. I'd like to hear about them sometime later, but for now, I'm just glad you're all okay. I was beginning to think I should climb up after you. Jack's mum reached over and rubbed at a smear of bark on Jack's cheek before giving them all a quick hug. Jack and Tim, your soccer game starts soon. Soccer? Tim said. Oh, I forgot. I'm too tired for soccer. I'm sure you'll be fine once you've got some food in you, Jack's mum said. Too tired for soccer, Jack cried. Sir Fartus. Guess I'll manage to play, Tim said. Our team's got a bye this week, Alice said. I was annoyed about that, but now I'm glad. I'm going home to finish my story, Lucy said. I'm going home to start my story, Alice said. By the way, Jack's mum said, Mr. Nalfahu said his granddaughter, Bessie, is coming to live with him tomorrow. Maybe you guys could invite her to do stuff with you. Yeah, we will, Alice said. She reached into her pocket and rubbed the tupper cloth between her fingers. Mr. Nalfahu had given her good luck. She didn't want him to worry about his granddaughter. I'd better go and start my story, Alice said. See you all later. She held her sleeping kitten safely in her arms and crossed the road to her home. Ka kite, Jack's mum called after her. That evening, Alice sat on her bed with Ngeru curled up beside her, purring. She'd read over her story twice. It was an okay story, she thought. Maybe Miss Brennan, their student teacher, would think so too. She pictured Miss Brennan dangling from the obstacle course, talking about the call to adventure and difficulties and challenges. Ella's story had all of those things. She imagined Mr. Tamati standing outside the classroom greeting everyone as they walked in on Monday. Morena, he'd say to the students, and he'd make some small comment like, how's that dog of yours? Or, did you manage to work out that maths riddle over the weekend? Outside her window, the sun was edging away, its soft golden handprint lingering on Tui Street. Her friends were still skateboarding and practicing soccer tackles outside. She hadn't ended up joining them tonight because she'd wanted to keep an eye on Ngeru. She patted him over and over, feeling his purr vibrate through her hands as he slept. Outside, Jack yelled, Don't let Terry get the ball! A moment later, he cried, Oh, no! Ella smiled. Terry could tackle a ball off anyone. There was a light knock on Ella's bedroom door, and her dad and her stepmom, Serena, came in. Everything okay? Her dad asked. Yep, he's sound asleep, Ella answered. I've locked the cat flat, Serena said. Hey, how's the story going? Finished it, Ella said. She couldn't help but smile. It was such a relief to have completed the first hero's journey, because they had to write 3 in total. Serena smiled back. Well, I'm looking forward to reading it, if you'll let me sometime. She bent over and stroked Ngeru. And you, my friend, stay away from that tree. Serena looked at Ella's bedside table. Hey, who gave you that? She asked. Ella followed Serena's gaze to the tiny square of tupper cloth she'd placed there. Mr. Nalfahu, she said, it's good luck. Ah, Serena said, sort of like a talisman, the magical thing you take on a journey. Ella's eyes widened. The tupper cloth was a talisman. Serena reached over and gently pressed Ella's arm for a moment. "Night," she said. Serena reached over and "Night," she said. "Night, Ella," her dad said, hugging her. They closed the bedroom door behind them. Ella could hear her friends outside calling out to each other as they headed home. Her two little stepsisters were giggling in the bedroom next door. Ella smiled. Flicking off her bedside light, she snuggled down beside Ngeru. Her heavy eyelids closed to the lull of his purr and the shush of the creek behind Jack's house. Outside, the moon slowly rose, full and round, to watch over Tui Street while everybody slept. And that's the end of the Sky Country story with its 3 parts. I hope you've enjoyed it. See you later.